of the animals. So, how do animals detect environmental stimuli? That's by the sensor organs, and there are many type of the sense organs. And sense stimuli is starting point of the behavior, and it are not necessarily same as the human sense, and sometimes they will be totally different from that of the human being, and many times they will not resemble to that of the human beings. So there are photoreceptors in the animal, and animals light is detectable by the eyes. The structure of the eye varies from different organisms one to the other organisms. So here you can see several type of the eyes are present in different animals, maybe the dog, cat, and other things. So it varies from one animal to another animal. So starting from most primitive animal, that is the snails, have simple eyes which detect the light in the same way as we can detect. And insects and crustaceans like crab, etc., have compound eyes made up of many separate, that is the omatidia, and these give a mosaic vision very good for detecting the movement of an animal. And at the same time, you can see here some of the bees, etc., do have the compound eyes, and they do contain the different type of the visions. And structure of eyes of the vertebrates have lenses that help to form clear images. And if two eyes face towards, they have overlapping fields, that's called as the binocular vision, enabling good judgment of the distance. And this is the vertebrate eyes of a chimpanzee, which is very similar to that of the human being. And vertebrates eyes are always in a pair. And here you can see the vertebrate eyes do have the eye, etc., with the eyelid, then the cornea, then extracellular muscles. And these muscles are very much required for the animal to have the movement of the eye. And the retinal blood vessels supply to the eye, and optic nerve is the one which carries the sensory impulses inside the brain and processed. So the eye is one of the important organ of the animal through which the animal is connected with the external world. Of course, the ears are also going to support to some extent, but eyes are very important for the animals to have a vision. And all the animals do not have the colored vision. Some of the animals do have just black and white vision, and they are colorblind. And the night vision is involved a structure called as the tapetum, and this is a layer of silvery crystals that acts as a reflector, allowing animals like cats to pick up 50% more light at night than humans can detect. So these animals, in which the tapetum is present, just like the owls also do have in vision, especially in case of the cats, is very very special, and they have got the glowing eye. And of course, few of the dogs do also have the good vision to detect movements, speed, movement, etc. So the cheetah, etc., have got the very good vision for the speedy movement. And color vision, as the humans, we see the violet, indigo, Vigor, Vigor, like violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, orange, and red parts of the light spectrum you can recognize. But bees see ultraviolet light, but they are less sensitive to red. They cannot recognize the red. And this is why the most red flowers have some blue or a strong scent. And the bees detect the flowers, etc., by the colors also sometimes, because they can also detect the ultraviolet lights. And the color vision, goldfish can see for red light more and more. And sea birds are particularly sensitive to red light, and they can easily detect the red colored things. And sea birds vision, especially see red spot, the chicks respond in a different way depending upon the color of the spot in the parent's bill. Suppose it's a white bill, then the response rate is less. Blue spotted bill has little more, black spotted have got much more, and red spotted has got highest red vision. Whereas the thermoreceptors are the one which are going to heat in most of the animals, but certain animals can detect warm objects as they can see them. For example, the snakes. Say snakes are the cold-blooded animals. Blooded animals means they can adjust to the environmental temperature. They can increase the body weight or decrease the body weight as per the environmental temperature. Whereas the hot-blooded animals like mammals cannot change their body temperature, and it's constant for every species is concerned. Hence, the snake's heat sensors have two heat sensing pits in front of the slightly below their eyes, and these are so accurate in that the snake can strike prey in a pitch dark also. They can have the very good vision, and the thermoreceptors are there especially to heat detection in the skin. And some of the animals like mosquitoes in home on their prey using the thermoreceptor. Then the mechanoreceptors are the one, they are sensitive for this touching, touch, pressure, and also the movement. And these let the animals know which they are, and they help recognizing of position of one part of the body in relation to the another. And this is important for coordinated movement. Then the mechanical receptors are also there. So touch, sensation, pressure, and texture objects in case of environmental, plus the tension in internal organs such as the stomach or the bladder. For example, the bladder is full and one has to go for the urination. That reflex would be a mechanoreceptors which are present on the urinary bladder inner place. And these organs are function of the stretch receptors. Whereas the mechanoreceptors are also present on the skin of the human beings, and they have got the tactile receptors. Suppose a heat or the pin prick is there on the skin of any animal, it will withdraw the skin because there are the mechanoreceptors are there. They will sense the pain, send through the sensory nerves to the brain, and the brain signal sends the motor signal to withdraw the hand or whatever it may be. So sometimes the animals have hairs with the receptors of this, like the whiskers, especially in case of cats, just like the mustache. Very special type of the hairs are present in case of the cats. And here you can see that the cats have got the very special type of the whiskers, which do have the sense receptors, and these are also called as one of the sense organs, especially in case of the whiskers. And mechanoreceptors are have got, especially some of the animals have got special sense of organs called as the statocytes that serve as gravity receptors. So inside the skin, etc. So the gravity means fish, for example, they have got lateral rhine organ that runs in the length of the body, and this consists of hairs with their tips enclosed in the jelly-like substance, and these respond to waves, currents, or disturbances in the water. Accordingly, they sense and change the direction of their movement and escape out of the danger. So, they have got most of the fish. They have got lateral line organ. So on the side of the body, they have got a base lateral line network, and these are sensitive for the waves, currents, especially. So the pressure, etc. So they change the direction. Whereas the lateral lines, so this is the main tube, then the sensory cells are present on the lateral line and surface core of some of the fish are got. And the mechanoceptors are the proprioceptors are sense organs that respond to tensions in the muscles or in the body. So they are present almost all in the muscles. So, for example, in case of a human being, this is clavicle, this is bursa, then the some of the scapula parts, like the cartilages and also the humerus, which is a cross section of the shoulder bone. So these do have the proprioceptors that respond to tensions in the muscles and the joints. So the movement of the joints, etc., will happen from this thing. So chemoreceptors are one which are sensitive to the olfaction or the smell, and this is the detection of the chemicals in the air or water that diffuse towards or are swept towards the animal and used for the preliminary examination of the things at a distance. So the chemoreceptor or gustation, taste, the detection of the chemicals in the liquid or solid state. So, most of the animals do have the taste receptor or taste buds with highest sensitivity of the taste in case of the human being. So, for examination, the objects that have been touched, four basic tastes are there: sweet, sour, salty, and bitter. So, usually, the sweet is the one which is sensed very fast in some animals, but the sensitivity will change from one animal to another animal. Then, human tongue is the one which tonsils, then sensory papillae, median sulcus, then taste buds are present on the side, on the center, and also back. For example, the salt taste is detected throughout the tongue, and bitter always in between the tongue, and the sour toast are more and more backside of the tongue, and sweet is also entire tongue is involved. Then the gustatians are located on different areas of the tongue. So the bitter, most probably back of the tongue is there, whereas the sour is always sensed most. That doesn't mean that the other parts of the tongues cannot recognize, but more and more sour is detected on side of the teeth, whereas the salt and sweet are end of the tongue, or tip of the tongue, they are going to recognize it very fast. Whereas the chemoreceptors are the distinctions between smell and taste and becomes blurred in simple animals. Humans use their nose and tongues for distinction between the smell and taste, both one. So they have got a very special type of the receptors. And the flies have taste hairs, for example, on their feet. So this is the type of the feet. And many insects smell using the antennae. They have got the long antennae, and that is the one which makes the animal to taste the food. And reptiles like the snakes have a very small opening in the head, and this open into the roof of the mouth, and that's called as the Jacobson's organ. And see here, this is the Jacobson organ which is present below the nasal opening, so they are unable to recognize the taste from the tongue actually, but they are able to detect it from the Jacobson organ and send it to the brain, and accordingly it's going to smell. Whereas the Jacobson organ or omenronasal organs, so, for example, the snake flipping out its forked tongue is collecting chemical samples and bringing them back to the Jacobson organ. So, that's why they are withdrawing the tongue and always sometimes stretch and get this sense of the smell, especially the snakes. Then another thing is the pheromones, and these are the chemicals used to communicate between membranes of the same species. Members of the same species have receptor to pick up these pheromones, and other species ignore them. And same species will always have the sense of these pheromones. For example, the cats, dogs, and many more animals which are belonging to the carnivores, always they have the sense of pheromones, including the birds, reptiles, and also some of the insects. So the sometimes the humans do not have much smell of the pheromones, but sometimes they are also little sensitive. So the auditory receptors are present in the ear, especially many of the vertebrates, and these vibrations are transmitted across the middle ear and by three small bones are there, and these type of the bones are going to have their own vibration for incoming sound, etc., and every sensory organ has its own limitations, especially it is measured in decibels, and this initiates impulse in the auditory nerves, and we can finally hear without brain. Then human ear, you can see the structure is like this. This is called as the ear canal, and outer one is the pinna or auricle, and the below and above there is a fat tissue deposition is there. Then this is the temporal bone, whereas the inner ear structure is also called as, this part is sometimes filled with the wax. Then tympanic membrane will be present inside the middle ear. Then the steps or oval windows will be vibrating, and this is one of the important thing where in which it is also called as cochlea. Then cochlear nerves will be present, and semicircular canals will be there, and whenever a sound comes and hits to this particular especially cochlea, then it is being sensed to the brain through the auditory nerves. So, of course, there are no connection between the two ears, but both the ears do have the sense of having the auditory response. And humans can hear from 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. But sound above this is ultrasonic and they cannot hear. So the bats use ultrasonic bleeps as a form of the sonar. And dogs and many insects hear in case of the ultrasonic range. And auditory receptors use a like it's a uncomplicated communication system involving ultrasonic sounds and echolocation and very low sounds called as the infrasounds, which travel for a longer distance. Some of the animals do have. For example, a whale sends out these sounds and songs. That's called as the whale song. Very characteristically, it will produce the song, and it is going into the form of a wave. And these sound waves reflect a fish swimming towards the wave, and whale uses those reflected sounds to determine where the fish is and what direction it is swimming and get the prey of it. Then the elephants and hippos use infrasound waves to communicate over long distances, both of these very huge mammals, especially. So, certain species they stun their prey with a electric shock. For example, the eels, moraines, and certain fish create the electric field around themselves and allowing them to pick up any disturbances in the field. And it is very surprising that they produce the electric current to have the detection. And this is the way how they are going to produce the electric current and get the sense. Whereas the magnetic fields are also created by some of the birds, especially the pigeons, can detect the magnetic field even. Of course, the human beings are unable to detect the magnetic field and the lines of the earth, and they use this to navigate during the migration for homing. So, especially they get the magnet or the especially the sense and many more things are there, especially how this communicated to the brain and how they are going to have the effect on each other and how they respond to a stimuli, and that is beyond the scope of this topic. And have a nice day. Bye. See you.